Hi, I'm presenting on behalf of the ninth grade humanities teachers at Hillsdale on how we created a walled research garden, but with the extension that we had a gate to the World Wide Web. I'm Sarah Press. I'm presenting on behalf of Dagny, Andrew, and Christy, our ninth grade English humanities team at Hillsdale High School. Our opportunity was as we were working on a soldier autobiography narrative that went with an amazing World War I unit originally designed by Greg Dorellis and Susan Bedford. We wanted our students to develop rich and generative schema around World War I and the whole historical period that's different from the period they know. No cell phones, no cars, people don't really get pregnant before they're married necessarily, in order to create historically accurate and inspired historical fiction. The challenge is that now that there's a ton of research available on the internet, especially given that we're at the centennial anniversary of World War I, there's so much information it's almost impossible to begin. So how do you get kids to get their feet wet so that they have some confidence as they explore those resources? And how do you get them to then pull those facts meaningfully into a creative narrative piece? The tools we used were all through Google. They're very simple, and we did them in 4 steps. We started with a Google spreadsheet where we collected curated research sites for students to explore. Then we had students submit a Google form, which populated a spreadsheet with crowdsourced research. Then students created a Google presentation as a visual multimedia way to synthesize and apply that research. And then as they wrote their pieces, they did ongoing research online and incorporated that research into footnotes in their Google Docs. Let me show you what that looked like. Here's some student work of the schema building and organic historical research in action. Step 1 was that we curated a bunch of different research sites around World War I, and we annotated them with very brief descriptions so that they were easier for students to skim through, and students could click on any sites that were interesting to them. Then students submitted a Google form for homework where all they had to do was look through one site, choose one fact, and brainstorm how it could connect to the narrative. We had them submit a form with several fields, including the perspective, whether it related to British, German, colonial soldiers, or all three, and which historical research category it fit into, so that it was easily sortable for the next activity. In the next activity, students sorted through all of the crowdsourced research that all of the students in the 9th grade had done and chose specific facts that they thought were interesting and helped them generate ideas for their own autobiography. Here you see 2 slides, the title slide from the student's presentation with a photo that he's generated of his soldier and his weight, which he chose to put in stone based on research, and one of the facts that he researched. So this is from the spreadsheet of the crowdsourced work. He chose a fact about medical technology around which soldiers were wounded and how they thought about those wounded soldiers, and then he brainstormed how that could show up in his own story narrative. So before they ever started writing, students had gotten exposed to a lot of schema about the area and had specifically chosen some facts and thought about how those would show up so that the process of incorporating research was more organic and less tacked on. This is an example from a student's paper where you can see that he has researched how much apples would have cost and also that groceries had gotten more expensive during the war. And because students had built their schema through this initial pass of the research, they were generating very authentic questions as they were writing. As they're writing, they were realizing, oh, I'm not sure how much an apple would have cost. Oh, I'm not sure what the currency was in Britain at that time. Oh, I'm not sure what the legal drinking age was in Germany at this time. And we're organically looking up more and more research to bulk up the historical accuracy of their paper. Footnotes were a wonderful way for them to cite this work without having to teach a full works cited page. We taught them how to create a citation within EasyBib and then just to paste that into the footnote at the bottom of their paper. Our takeaways for future use: in our classes, this idea of researching in layers, doing an initial schema building round where the teacher curates resources, and then encouraging question asking and further exploration beyond that, seemed to work really well. In other classes, I would encourage folks to try out footnotes because they're easy and powerful ways to add reflection, metacognition, and rationales to work while still having a very polished final product. Credits to Greg Dorellis and Susan Bedford who created this project, as well as the entire 9th grade humanities team who worked on this with us.